Okay, so welcome everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. In case this is your first panel of this year's summit, welcome to the 2020 Athens Women's Football Summit. Quick thank you to Marios and his incredible team for their commitment to growing and supporting our game. Thank you for joining us for this panel, Women Leaders in the Beautiful Game, also known as our 10-year plan to equality. And another good title that I like that I can't take credit for is Breaking the Glass Ceiling. As you know, the objective of the summit as a whole is to spotlight the huge commercial potential in women's football right now. The public wants to see it. We all know it. It's trending all over the world. It's becoming professional around the world. The game changes lives for the better, and the momentum is unstoppable despite even these challenges of 2020. In this panel, we will focus on what leadership is, what it can do to create opportunities. We will identify some goals for the future of the women's game. And as I mentioned, we'll identify a tangible, achievable 10-year plan for our game. My name is Susie Petruccelli. I played soccer at Harvard in the 1990s. Among other things, I'm producing a documentary right now with Kelly Nascimento, who's Pele's daughter, called Warriors of a Beautiful Game, about a female footballer named Laís from the favelas of Brazil. And we're so proud and excited. She was just called up to the Brazilian full women's national team last week. And she's on her way to achieving her biggest dreams of playing in the Olympics and supporting her family as a professional female footballer. I just published a memoir called Raised a Warrior, One Women's Soccer Odyssey, in which I highlight many of the really fantastic people who are leading women's football around the world right now, exciting, disruptive leaders who are continuing the upwards trajectory, including my heroes and role models like these two amazing leaders that we have here today. It's an absolute privilege to have these two amazing allies with us to learn from their experience. We have with us Ebru Koksal. Ebru has an incredible life story, growing up in Turkey, going to college at Brown University in the US, where she got her degree in economics and international relations. Later went back to the Ivy League for an advanced management program at Harvard Business School. She started her career as an investment banker on Wall Street and then pivoted into top-level international football executive roles. Ebru ran the leading men's football club in Turkey for 15 years, Galatasaray. She has worked as a consultant for FIFA and UEFA for development projects in over 30 countries, focusing on leadership and governance as well as the business side of football. She is currently the chair of Women in Football, who just last week unveiled the results of their survey on gender discrimination in football. They surveyed their 4,000 members and found that 66% of women in football have experienced gender discrimination, and only 12% of those incidents were reported. And now we will go to Ebru's introductory video.
66% of women in the football industry have experienced gender discrimination. It's time for change, and we're leading it. Who are we? We are Women in Football, a network of 4,000 women and men dedicated to driving women in football forward, helping women hone their talents and pushing open doors for more diversity, developing the leaders of the future where gender discrimination doesn't exist, and most of all, dedicated to transforming the industry for the better. We're empowering women and men with knowledge, expertise, and collective support to create a stronger, brighter, and more diverse future. We're here, we're working, and we're making changes. It's good for the industry, and it's just good business. Whilst others champion the need for change, women in football are the ones driving it. Join us at Women in Football and be part of the change. Let's move the game forward for the future of football.
Excellent. I'm also proud to introduce Tatjana Haenni, former professional football player. She represented the Swiss women's national team 23 times between 1984 and 1996. After her successful career on the field, she began her professional career in the game, where, like Ebru, Tatjana is a pioneer. She started working for UEFA in 1994, where she was the first employee fully dedicated to women's football. She was with UEFA for 4 years before joining FIFA in 1999, where she worked as Deputy Director of the Competitions Division and the head of women's competition. She led all organizational aspects of the FIFA Women's World Cups and was instrumental to the evolution of FIFA's women's football programs, dynamically serving women's football at FIFA for just shy of 19 years. She has extensive knowledge about the challenges and barriers in all regions of the world and experienced the full spectrum of roles at FIFA. She's currently the head of women's football for the Swiss Football Federation. Thank you both so much for taking the time to be with us here today.
Thanks, it's a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
All right, let's jump right into it. So let's start at the beginning with why football matters, why women's football matters.
You want to go first, Tatjana?
As a player, you mean? Maybe I take the player's angle. I mean, women's football matters as much as football matters. Football is a game and it can be played by everybody. Football doesn't equal to men's football. Football is a game. It's good for boys and girls, men and women, no matter what age. It's fun. We all know the professional level of the game is actually quite small. The big numbers of football are the grassroots and the amateur level, and it's just a great sport for the world, for society, for people, for many different reasons. Health, of course, but also inclusion, socially, culturally, everything. And that's why football is just the best sport in the world and should be played by everybody possible.
But in terms of, the federation level, the club level, and society, Ebru, why would you say women's football really matters?
Well, I think because for so many decades, it was also seen as such a male-dominant sport that it almost became a sign of courage for women, to be playing football. And it gave them even much more confidence in other parts of their daily lives to be able to play football. And that's why it was, I think, so important. And still, I had the pleasure to work with Tatjana quite a bit with different, in different countries. And it has a significant importance in the society for health reasons, but also for equality, prosperity, justice, and preventing young child, early marriages, early pregnancy. So there's so many aspects that can help little girls if they are playing football and playing a sport rather than being at home and being bound by the regulations of their society and their culture.
And so why would you say that leadership matters so much? And why is it so important to have women in decision-making bodies?
Yeah, for me, I think we have to make a difference between women in decision-making bodies and women's football. I really think that's an important topic we might need to talk about because, at least according to my opinion, it's not dealt with enough. We talk a lot about women in football, and we talk about women in leadership positions, which is absolutely necessary and important and a key topic nowadays. But to me, women in football means diversity, which we all know is also a must. It's business-wise, for decision-making processes, the absolute best to have. But to me, this means a diverse group of people taking decisions and driving the sport or the football or men's and women's football forward. You may have a woman who wants to be a president of a club like Ebru was, or you want to be the FIFA president, might be a woman in the future, but then 90% of her job might be more in men's football. But then women's football as a sport, as a product, also needs decision-making power. So actually we're talking both, and of course it might have a link. More women coming out of women's football, obviously, so these women might have decision-making roles in football federations. But still, I don't think it's a must. So there are two different topics we need to talk about, and both need to be looked at because both are totally underrepresented in nowadays football decision-making structures.
I agree with Tatjana. Probably one thing I would add is when a woman wants to work in football, they're automatically directed towards women's football. And that shouldn't be the case. Maybe in some cases, there's a man who's more qualified to take women's football forward in that club or organization or country. And maybe on the men's side, there's a woman who's much more qualified to take care of the finances of a club. So being present as a woman at every level of the game, without any prejudices and with equal opportunities, that's what we are teaching for. And of course, I have seen, of course, throughout my 20-year career in football that women and ex-players tend to care obviously much more about supporting women's football. And when in especially big governing bodies, when there's nobody that is standing up for women's football, it can get lost, you know, in the corridors, in the strategic plans, in the budgets. So whether it's a man or a woman, there needs to be people who are solely responsible for women's football and who believe in it and who work for the advancement of it.
Where would you say are sort of our 10-year goals for the women's game? Let's get right into it.
10-year goals would mean we don't need those topics anymore in all our conferences and seminars, and we don't need to do specific female leadership programs and all these great things we have nowadays, which are needed and a must. It's a, you know, it's the motor and the catalyst to change coming up from the bottom. And of course, if we need to change decision-making bodies, we also need to make sure we have the pipeline ready with capable men and women in all different areas. So my dream would be we continue on the path we are, but we speed up, we triple probably the speed, and in 10 years you will see tournaments like the FIFA Women's World Cup last year, you know, closing the gap to the Men's World Cup, which I really think we can in terms of viewership, but also what is totally unclear right now is the commercial value of a FIFA Women's World Cup because of the package, how FIFA so far structured their commercial rights, but we don't know, or at least it's not public know-how, what the value of a FIFA Women's World Cup is. And I think once we can put figures to that and other competitions, big ones like the Women's Euro, the Women's Champions League, and other competitions coming up, I really think it's I hope in 10 years it's a commercially super interested product where brands invest and people will be as interested as in men's football.
I guess my sort of 10-year dream or wish would be that women's football can stand on its own feet without any questioning or without any support from, you know, men's football side. And it is a standalone product on its own, a very, very attractive one, and not for simply CSR ideas or purposes, but a true return on investment opportunity. And the competitive balance and the gaps in between the women's national teams and women's clubs is not that huge yet. So it is a closer race, and with some small investment, it's much easier for smaller countries, smaller clubs who are not yet in the game to be part of it. Right, it's a big dream for a Turkish club one day to have the 800 million euro revenue, but it's easier for a Turkish women's club, for example, to get to a sustainable level of financial performance to compete in Europe. So I think I would love it when owners and presidents and boards are no longer questioning the validity or the feasibility of investments in women's football, and that there's a line of sponsors who want to be associated with this version of the game, and that we are never going to be, as women's football, happy with leftovers, let's say, right? That we have our own right to be present, and hopefully the same structures, especially in terms of youth development and academies and getting access to all the same resources that young male players young boys are getting. So just complete equality at every level, equality of opportunity, equality of chance, in which case I really think that the success and the financial returns will be very easy to prove.
But maybe since we're talking, if I may add, the commercial side of it, and what I like to say is, in another company, and I probably know we shouldn't make a promotion for a specific company, but they're so rich and big, everybody knows them. They don't need me here to make promotion. But let's take Coke. Coke produces drinks, but they don't have only Coke. They have different other elements of drinking stuff. They have water, they have flavors, whatever. But it all belongs to the same company. And I think they're doing that to have a diverse offer for different people. If somebody doesn't want to drink Coke, they have other things. They have then also Coke Zero, which I think they needed 20 years to invest to make sure it's as known and as sold as it's now. But they saw the potential. They saw that they need something which is different to Coke, because there's other people who don't want to drink it. And in football, for me, that's the same logic. We haven't realized the men's football owners, is it clubs or associations, focusing so much of men's football because that's the history. They haven't realized that they can actually be more successful if they broaden up their company, their organization, and include other elements of football. And women's football has totally a value, maybe as today, not as big as men's football, but it will grow. And if you look at Coke Zero, if I'm not wrong, it's more sold nowadays than Coke. And why not women's football? Why is it not possible that women's football is more commercially interested in 20 years maybe than men's football? You just don't know. But the starting point is you need to believe in it, and you need to see the value, and you need to see why it's good for your company. And in football, unfortunately, in most cases, the decision makers haven't really, looked at it that way. They just do it for maybe social reasons, or because they have to, or they think it's nice, or it doesn't cost that much. But I don't think that there are many organizations out there who really do it because they believe fundamentally from a business side in it, and they see some return on investment in 5 or 10 years. And that's the culture we need to change.
Right. Tatjana, I'm curious, from your perspective with so many years at FIFA, where do you stand on the issue of the prize money gap? I mean, obviously, we all know that the Men's World Cup brings in, millions more revenue than the Women's World Cup. And as you said, we can't place a value yet on the Women's World Cup. But where do you stand on how to equalize the prize money?
Well, I'm not a big fan of equal. I think that's too simple. I mean, of course, I'm for every topic for better development of the women's game, the player situation. There are many things we can work on, but it's too simple just to say it has to be one and one the same. And to me, that doesn't make any sense. And we also have to respect the fact that commercially and financially, the Men's World Cup is just such a different number than the Women's World Cup. So I can totally accept that there are differences, maybe even big differences, but where I struggle is that the difference gets bigger, and that's, I think, what has happened last time. So I think between the Men's World Cup and the Women's World Cup, the prize money the difference in it should get smaller. But not only the prize money for the Women's Club, if you look at the Women's World Cup, there's so many things we should be looking at to be improved. It's like the team-based camps, how these teams travel, is it business class, is it not business class? There are huge differences between the countries itself. So some are super well developed, some others are not developed. And that's, I think, a competitive disbalance and unfairness. So prize money to me is too simple. I think we have to look at it in a bigger way. But if you want a short answer, then I think it's wrong if the differences get bigger.
Ebru, what is your opinion? I would love to have FIFA commit to some kind of 20-year or 25-year commitment to closing the gap. What do you think?
Again, with my finance hat, I tend to agree with Tatjana that there needs to be a proportionality in terms of revenue generated, and things unfortunately do not change overnight. It's a whole ecosystem that we need to invest in and build up. So it starts with viewership, fans, media, the coaches, referees. So you cannot just pick one aspect of it, and the investment needs to go into the whole ecosystem. We need to make sure that the structures are there to support this kind of a growth. But what I always say is, for the moment, probably globally overall budgets, only 1 or 2% is going to women's football. So if you were to take away another 1% from men's football, nobody's even going to notice. But that's doubling the women's football budget. And FIFA's commitment in the last cycle, last year, has been actually growing. So not just in terms of prize money, but in terms of also the kind of FIFA forward money and funds going into women's football. Let's just hope that that's going to be used well by the countries in the right way to make longer term growth plans and investments and strategic plans. And would be great to have a 20-year horizon, but again, equal prize money is probably never the right target. There needs to be other KPIs along with it.
Okay. So I would love for you both to tell me who, which organizations, which people in the world do you think are doing having the most impact right now? In terms, obviously, Ebru, we all know Women in Football is doing an amazing job. Who do you think those groups are? Who should we be, paying close attention to? I know obviously Amanda van der Voort at FIFPro is doing a wonderful job with her report, Raising a Game, that came out earlier this year. Are there any others, or who would you spotlight?
Allow me to speak just for a few minutes about the work that we are doing. I think our most important impact is probably connecting the women, because for the moment we have about 4,500 members, but that can easily go up to 10, 20, 30,000 because the women are there. They are working in their own little silos, maybe marginalized. The same survey that you just quoted, actually, women said 89% felt that they faced obstacles in their careers before. But equally looking forward, they also said that 78% of them felt that their colleagues, peers, and organizations supported them and that they were hopeful about the future, which is all great news. And we just need to work together to both at the bottom of the pyramid, make sure that the talent pool is there, is encouraged, is being trained in the right way, is spotted, is given opportunities, but equally at the middle and top levels of the pyramid where the decision makers sit, all the biases, all the prejudices are actually put aside. And with the lens of what is best for my organization, if it's the woman that's the best, pick her. Make sure that make sure that she fulfills the role that I expected from her. Give her the opportunity to perform. You don't just hire and expect them to be quiet and not challenge or contribute. We've seen that with some of the quota seats, unfortunately, whether it's in the governing bodies or in other organizations. Yes. Are there women? Yes. Are they ever contributing? No. Why is that? They were not the right women in the first place. So that's a huge issue. And then what we also try to do is, with our leadership courses, coaching, mentoring, we are upskilling the women on one side, but also we want to work collaboratively and pass on our knowledge and expertise as board members and some of our immediate circle of consultants to help organizations become more inclusive. And it starts from job advertisement, to selection panels, to retention, to training, to equal opportunities for growth and promotion. Who else is doing a good job? Obviously, I think quite a few of the media outlets, especially in the UK. I think Anna Kessel at the Telegraph, Susie Rack at the Guardian, Bex, our wonderful Bex at Copa 90. Everybody is working very hard to bring the media attention to women's football, to great leaders in football, whether they're women or men, doesn't matter, but people who are conscious and who are preaching for diversity and making sure that this culture is instilled and trickles down all the way in their organizations.
Tatjana, any favorites right now?
I think it's hard to add anything to this, what Ebru said. And you just never know. There were, in terms of associations, there were always a couple of associations you were thinking they're doing a good job or a better job, and some are kind of coming up and then disappearing again. As I am especially happy right now with, I think, Brazil, if I can say so. That was one of the countries I was so frustrated for the last 20 years or even more. You can be really sad at all countries where women have not the same opportunities and possibilities. But in South America, especially in South America, the potential is so huge. And these girls love football as their male colleagues. And they have a huge potential, love the game, and just never really had the opportunity to show the world what they can. And it seems in a couple, 1-2 last years, there was some change happening, and Pia is now the coach there. At the federations, they employed some women. So it looks like this is going the right way, finally. And I'm super happy for them. I would hope all South American countries, and I mean, of course, all countries in the world would follow. So I think I like Brazil right now. And you may have to correct me, especially Ebru, you know the landscape better, but I also like what England did in the last couple of years, even though to some extent it's almost a bit too much. But still, the leadership in the FA, they have a couple of women for women's football, but also in the other areas, which are just generic business units at the association where it's headed up by women. Diversity is important. The professional clubs are doing a great job, and it seems like this is really going in a right way. They just have to make sure it's not too quick, and the rest or some other countries and some other leagues can follow as well. And then some others are sleeping, like Germany maybe, and France. Switzerland is coming. We're a small country, but we're coming. So yeah, I think that the message here is, if you really want and you get it and you take it serious, you can actually develop quite quickly and have some successes quickly. But it has to be honest and for true reasons, and not just for political reasons or because it's nice to do.
Yeah, and let's not forget some great male allies, I think, over the years. First of all, Carl-Erik Nilsson. He's been such a long time supporter of women's football. And I never forget, I've, either watched live or attended some of the UEFA General Assemblies. And, 3 years ago, I think it was, that he, got up and asked about women's football budgets and why UEFA was not committing to a bigger budget, for example. So I thought that was wonderful. And then for the club football side, Ivan Gazidis played a big role at ECA last year for the installment of a diversity seat, as well as for the election of the first woman 9 years after I was elected. So I think we need to work also very closely with male allies. On our board, we now have 2 men. And wonderful Paul Barber just joined us, really a long-standing name in English football. And also Dan Carter has been on our board for a long time. I think we need to work hand in hand with organizations and industries. And I think there's a lot that can be done by the sponsors. And we mentioned Coke and many others. I'm sure their own internal diversity and inclusion standards and policies are really, really up there, but they don't necessarily hold the brands and names that they sponsor to the same standard. So imagine if that started happening one day. or if fans put pressure on their beloved national team or beloved club team, to make sure that they now have a women's football team or that they have a female board member. So there's a lot that can be done, and everyone has a role to play.
But it really comes down to the decision makers, because we had in Switzerland a small example, but we have a new league sponsor since last summer. And through that, we also got a media deal. We're on TV, on the national channel now, with online mostly, but also on the TV. And the viewers numbers are actually surprisingly good. All these words in the past, people are saying, yeah, but nobody cares and nobody watches, and that nobody's interested, we can't show it. It was just really arguments, it was excuses, it was just easy to say, not to be challenged, why don't you do it then? So they were saying things which actually they didn't know. And now that it's out there, we can compete with other lower level football matches, and of course not the men's national team for the moment, but everybody is quite happy with the viewership we have, just out of the blue, without any promotion, without any big investment before. So it's really, I think we were told so many excuses or lies in the past, which we need to challenge, because as I think Ebru mentioned it, the people are out there, they want to see it, they just don't know, because they don't get exposed to it. But once they see it, like the Women's World Cup, which was such a success and such a story, and everybody was surprised how successful it was. Wow. I mean, just do it more often and people will watch it, you will get used to it and you will love it. And then you start to ask for more, because then only you know that you want to see it. So it's a circle, but I think that's about to change, and the fact that we're so successful shows that people actually do watch it if they get presented.
Yeah. Also, Tatjana, on the men's football side, to consume has become extremely expensive, right?
Mm-hmm.
To watch a Premier League game, whether in the stadium or on TV, really not affordable by certain crowds, and especially after the pandemic, when a big portion of the workforce is cut, then it's very unaffordable. And for brands as well, the sponsorship figures are huge, whereas this opens another opportunity, I think, for women's football. And your love for the game, whether you are an investor or whether you are a sponsor or a fan, can easily shift towards women's football as a new product to try.
But isn't it crazy that you had partners like, we can mention them, I guess Visa did a great job. There were others in England. You have a couple of partners now. I think Barclays is one of them. I mean, there are companies starting to invest in women's football because they see the potential and the value, and it's big numbers. It's not just a little gift. And then at the same time, you have investors actually also starting to get interested to see if women's football is a product for them. And still the decision makers and the ones owning women's football, the associations and the clubs, are still a bit hesitant, most of them. And that's the crazy thing. So it's really a culture we need to change, because everybody else starts to get into it and starts to get excited and sees the value and starts to invest, just not the ones who actually really run it. And that is, I mean, Ebru, you can better explain that. But to me, that's just a culture we need to change in these organizations. They don't want to see it somehow.
It's a psychology. Yeah.
But also, one last thing to say is introducing club licensing regulations for women's football will bring in more investors as well. And secondly, again, the transfer value of female players will also bring in more investors, so that you are not just relying on gate receipts or TV money. And this has been a big factor in men's football. The UEFA club licensing financial fair play regulations that came into play in 2010-11 season actually changed the landscape quite a bit. And that's why we saw this big flood of investment when the investors felt more secure financially in terms of the regulations. And South America is my favorite for one more reason for that, is in order for men's clubs to participate in Copa Libertadores and Copa Americana, they need to have a women's team, which I think is a wonderful incentive.
That's a great step. Ebru, can you explain a little bit more what you were just saying about club licensing from a business perspective?
Yes. Well, the UEFA Financial Fair Play regulations obviously have 5 different segments in it, but one of it is about financial side and not owing overdue payables to players and other clubs, but also being break even, so not making a loss. And that part has ensured the possibility or reduce the possibility of losing a lot of money, basically. So if you want to be in the competitions, you need to be break even. But also there are infrastructure criteria, management criteria, youth facilities criteria, which means that if you want to participate in these competitions, then you need to have the minimum standards of a good facility, of a good stadium, of good personnel, and not just volunteers in your structure.
Right. I think that ties into what Amanda was presenting with Raising Our Game, right? From the global level, wasn't she talking about minimum working conditions and
yes,
base contracts and things like that?
Yes.
Okay, and then I know both of you have been very involved over many, many years on building these systems to train new leaders and encourage more female leadership. And also, like you were saying, to encourage more allyship for men in the women's game. I guess, what would you say are a few more things right now immediately that we could be doing?
Well, I mean, for example, leadership course and mentoring and coaching programs have been wonderful. And it's not just for women. I think it's for any young aspiring leader. It's really important to have self-awareness and to understand your strengths and weaknesses, your areas of development, and continuously invest in your, personal and professional growth. Because yes, you are learning at university, but once you get out, if you don't go back to training and learning and increasing your skills, then you're going to get stuck somewhere in your leadership journey. So that has been a very, very important aspect for me. And we've seen it work really well. Women who lack the confidence to try new things as a result of this course or any leadership course starts becoming more self-aware and more courageously approaching new projects and new possibilities, and is not afraid anymore to fail.
Yeah, for me, this is obviously great. The reason why we're having all these things is because we have such a low number of women involved everywhere. Right. So, we started through all these leadership courses, the development courses, and encouragement courses, whatever have you, to give at least to give them a chance to show themselves and to present themselves. Some of them need it, some of them actually don't need it. But at least it was a platform to connect, to meet others, to talk, to be comfortable and to develop your own skills. At the end, it still lacks the opportunities in the game, it's slowly changing, luckily. But if you look at the numbers of women involved in decision-making positions in executive committees, maybe the numbers are good, or are they the right people? That's another question. But then I really think, looking at the Swiss FA, we did a study last summer, and we actually have not that many women involved in the admin side. And we had none in the decision-making positions, none in the management board, and none in the highest committee we are having. And this is a circle. They don't look for women because they don't know them. They never had one, so it's not their network. They're not coming out of football club presidents. This whole association structure is not made right now for women to come through. So you need a conscious decision to say, yes, we need some. Otherwise, it's just not happening. And I think it's both. It's having these networks and sessions and courses for people to develop and to show, and at least to have some hope and to see that there are other women out there to work together and build up your network. So once you get somewhere, you also have a network. But then it's also the clubs and associations to really open up doors, because if they wait for their normal voting elections that a woman comes through, it's just so hard. And that's why you need a conscious decision to add women.
Okay, excellent.
I see a few questions in the chat box. Why don't I try to answer Tatjana's? What was the turning point in your career when men started looking at you as their equals? Well, for me, probably it was when I raised my hand and I nominated myself for a board seat and the elections at the European Club Association back in 2010. Everyone thought, wow, she's courageous. She's never going to get elected. Nice of her to try. But when I did get elected, because I carried out a wonderful campaign and explained all my knowledge and experience in football and how I can help with the growth of European football, people were convinced, persuaded, voted for me. I got the highest votes. And when I made it to that boardroom, all the doors opened. They knew that I was a fighter, I was knowledgeable, I was a good member of the team. So it takes a bit courage to stand up and try new things. But once you get your foot in the door, I think men are welcoming. At that point, they say, she's made it, we need to help her, we need to listen to her.
Yeah, my turning point was probably when I realized that being nice is not helpful. You have to find a balance between, of course, with the right arguments, but saying what you think, asking for more, explain to people why you want to move up, why you want to do something, why you think something is important. I also thought while doing a good job, they will realize that I'm doing a good job and that I'm good and that they might promote me, but that just never really happened. So, believe in yourself and ask for what you think you should get or you want to be or you want to do.
Good question, Tatjana. Okay, so this one from Rui. In general, do you think governments around the world are taking female football more seriously and professionally? In Brazil, we have a lot of great female footballers, but we're still struggling with proper investments and professionalism.
Yeah, if I can be short on that one, I think luckily Brazil goes the right way after probably 50 to 100 years of not going the right way. So I'm really positive and happy for them. But of course, is it perfect? By far, probably no. But it looks like a start at the right time. I hope if they're successful, they're doing good club football, as Ebru said. It just will continue to grow and develop, and then the investment will start as well. So fingers crossed for them, and I know they have the potential to win a World Cup. So let's see when this will happen.
And technically, it's not the government who needs to make the investment, but there are things they can help, to the clubs, to the federations by making some facilities available, or especially more importantly, incorporating girls' football into the school programs, because by the time all clubs regionally have a girls' section, it's a much longer period, but they're all going to school, and if they're able to play at school, that's a great start. And that's what the UK is trying to do now, and the FA on our wonderful What If program made a pledge to bring football to every single school for girls, which is a great way to increase participation.
Right, that was commitment to 2024, right? They're going to bring schools football to all schools in England.
Yeah.
Okay, if we don't have any other questions, Tatjana and Ebru, do you have any final thoughts of encouragement, final words of encouragement?
Well, Tatjana and I have known each other for more than 10 years, probably. We've spoken at so many of these sessions, but makes me feel good. We're not in the same place where we were 10, 15 years ago. We've made a lot of progress, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And I'm going to continue speaking until it's time to disappear, because there's no more discrimination, there's no more inequality. So look forward to that day.
Yeah, similar to Ebru, I've been there for some years, but it has never been as great as now. And I think there's a new generation, there are new people, there are new decision makers. I can see it in my association in Switzerland, where I think it has never been as good as now. And we're, in a way, a bit a conservative and slow country when it comes to women's rights and women's issues. But it seems like there are new people, and it's a great trend, a great movement, and I'm positive that in 10 years we will probably have reached many of our goals just because it happens.
Wonderful. Well, I thank you both again for your time, and thank you everybody.
What's your wish? What's your wish for the 10-year plan?
My wish is for FIFA to commit to a long-term horizon for equal pay. That's my wish.
Good one. Good luck.
I know. Well, I'll pray. But thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.